Alright, so today we're talking about some buy low trade targets. Now, I know it's only the start of the season and some managers are hesitant to make any trades, and by all means, I'm all for waiting a few weeks before you make any trades, but if there's someone in your league that has these players on their team and you think you can get a deal for them, it doesn't really hurt to shoot an offer, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm in my personal leagues, I'm always offering trades, whether, like, if I think a player is at a very low value and I see the manager kind of panicking or start to wonder, or there's like a common narrative going around as to why a player is performing sort of below their norm or below expectations. So I like to play into that and sort of just try to offer trades surrounding that. And yeah, so we're just gonna go ahead and get right into it. Before we begin, feel free to drop a like on the video and subscribe if you want to. The channel's been blowing up a lot recently, so massive shout out to you guys for that. Really appreciate it. And if you don't agree with anything I say, perfectly fine. Just leave a comment explaining yourself in the comments down below. No need to get angry. It's just my opinion, guys. I feel like I have to put this disclaimer at the start of more of my videos because people have been getting pissed at my opinions. Like, I'm not saying I'm some kind of expert or anything. I just put my opinion in. Usually, I try my best to be as accurate as I can, but it doesn't mean I'm going to always get it right. So, yeah, I think that's good enough for that. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. So these guys are all pretty big name players, but we're going to start off the list with probably the biggest name on the list, and it's going to be James Harden. So going into this season, Harden is ranked inside of my top 5 fantasy players. I still believe in that, honestly. I'm really not that concerned about James Harden. I know there was the rule change, and it is affecting his playstyle. That much is evident. His numbers are way down. But, like, we're talking about one of the greatest scorers of all time. He is going to figure it out. He's not going to average 3 free throws for the entire season. Right now, he's averaging 17 points per game, 7 rebounds, 8 assists. Like, this is James Harden we're talking about here. I don't know where people are getting the narrative from that it's like, oh, James Harden doesn't know how to score if there's no free throws involved. While, granted, there's probably going to be an adjustment period that we see him going through currently. Like, it is the start of the season. He was injured last year. He rehabbed his hamstring injury all summer. If we look at James Harden as a fantasy player right now, I'm very confident in his ability to produce. I don't think he's going to average 17 points per game for this season. I feel like that's going to be up around 25 points per game at the very least. So James Harden is just one of those players that, like, I'm really not that concerned about. I think one of the things that's, like, hindering him or making people think that he's just not going to be as good now because of the rule change is because of, like, there's a very heavy narrative around James Harden. Everybody knows it. He's like the foul drawing king. When you think of drawing fouls, you think of James Harden. So there is going to be an adjustment. They pretty much implemented the rule to stop what players like him were sort of emulating and sort of taking advantage of the rules. But yeah, like I said, there's obviously going to be an adjustment period. He was injured last season. I'm really not buying into this early season slump that he's sort of in. I do think he's going to find his way out of it, and his numbers are going to skyrocket. So in terms of players that I think you could maybe trade for him right now, I usually don't suggest too many options because there's just so many valuable pieces, and there's so many players in the league that it's impossible to think of trades involving players that you every single person is going to have on their fantasy team. But I'm thinking maybe if you could try a Chris Paul and someone in the mid-range like that, or maybe a Jonas Valanciunas and someone. Jonas has been playing really solid. But yeah, I feel like James Harden's value very low right now. I'm really not concerned about him. If I have him on my fantasy team, I wouldn't trade him. But if someone has them and they don't watch this video or they don't watch any videos and they're panicking, I don't think it really hurts to shoot an offer in on Harden. I think it's a really good time to make an investment on him because I feel like this is the lowest his fantasy value is going to be for the entirety of the season. And when you're looking at a guy who has potential to be a top 5 fantasy player, a little early season slump really isn't that much to be concerned about in my opinion. So yeah, that's why I'm pretty pro trading for James Harden right now. I'm not too concerned about it, and yeah, that's all I have to say about him. We'll go ahead and get into the next player. Alright, so second on my list is another guy that I have ranked inside my top 10 fantasy players. It's Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard is somebody that has had a horrendous start to the season, and I'm really not concerned about it if he's on my fantasy team. I'm not trading him away right now. I saw a stat that he's made less 3-pointers this season than Russell Westbrook. This is Dame Lillard we're talking about here. This is not some schmuck that had a breakout season last year that were maybe he won't be able to keep it up. He has been consistently one of the best performers in the NBA for the past few seasons. He's one of the best shooters in the league, probably top 3 shooter in the league right now. And he's leading his team. He's the best player. He's always going to be getting the ball in his hands. He's going to be creating pretty much their entire offense runs around Dame. I'm really not too worried about him. I think he's going to pick it up. There was a little rumor that maybe his abdominal injury was from the Olympics is going to affect his play, and that's why he's performing at a poor rate, but he's still playing. He said it is just a manageable thing. We can't really go off any more than the reports, but so far we're just sort of hoping he's going to bounce back. I'm very on the side that I think he is going to pick up his production soon. He's too good of a shooter to keep averaging the numbers. Right now he's averaging 17 points, 7 assists, shooting 36% from the field and not hitting his 3-pointers. And Dame Lillard not hitting his 3-pointers is not a trend I would expect to continue. But he's another player that people are like, maybe it's the new foul rules affecting him, but it's like that is not the only way Damian Lillard was scoring the basketball, and I'm really not expecting that to continue. So maybe someone I would try to trade for Damian Lillard right now, because his value is maybe even a bit lower than Harden's, is I'd try like a Brandon Ingram or a Zach LaVine maybe. If you have a Zach LaVine on your team, I think that would be a really good trade if you can get Damian Lillard. Maybe you have to throw in another piece, but I'm okay with that. I do think Damian Lillard will finish as a top 10 points league player, and I'm not really going to change on that at this point in the season. I think it's just too early to tell if he's going to drastically fall off. And I think, you know what, maybe try to throw in an offer. He is a buy low target, pretty much the definition of a buy low right now. Maybe someone isn't trusting this like early season slump and does think that this will continue to be the norm for some reason if they're more of a casual fantasy player. But yeah, if you're in a competitive league, they probably won't trade like Damian Lillard or Harden right off the bat. But I have a few guys coming up that maybe even in a competitive league you might be able to buy low on, so we'll just go ahead and move on to them now. So next up we got Bradley Beal. I don't know what was going on, but Bradley Beal has not been shooting the rock at as efficient a rate as he was last season. He just finished his game with the Celtics at the time I'm recording this, and again, he was getting the looks, but they just were not falling for him. And we're talking about the guy that led the league in scoring last year, I believe. I'm really not too concerned about it, man. Just the like early season jitters, he's averaging 21 points per game, 3 rebounds and 4 assists. And while his peripheral numbers might not be the most solid, like that's probably right around what his average for the season, I believe, in terms of like rebounds and assists. It's not going to be anything crazy. But if we look at his points per game, man, like he averaged over 30 points per game. He's not going to average 21. So there's not really any way that his fantasy output doesn't increase as the season progresses. He's really just struggling from 3, from mid-range, anywhere really. Just hasn't found his shooting stroke yet, but he's one of the shooters that I would trust more than anyone. Probably one of the best, well, not even a probably, he is one of the best scorers in the league. So yeah, I'm expecting that to turn around. Washington really is dependent on him. He's having the ball in his hands, and he's going to be getting like 25 plus shot attempts a night. Put that together into it's just a formula for a great buy low option. I've actually traded for Bradley Beal in one of my leagues. This is more of a casual one, but I was able to get him for Anthony Edwards. Another thing that is a bit worrying about Bradley Beal that you can probably sell if you're like talking to someone about him is that he still is unvaccinated. So I think that is a bit of a risk as well, but I think it's like you can take the risk if it's a buy low target and you're not giving up too much, and you can sort of get a good return because he is unvaccinated. So there are like, you can play up the, oh, maybe he'll like not be able to play in certain areas if they change the laws, because right now he won't have to miss any games if he's an away team. But like I said, that's all subject to change, so he is probably one of the riskier options on my list. But I feel like for the how low of a price that you could probably get him at right now, I think it's worth sending an offer. Like I said, maybe an Anthony Edwards. Maybe you could even pull off like a Miles Bridges and someone, because Miles Bridges is playing out of his mind. I don't really know anyone that would trade for Miles Bridges if they knew what they were doing, but hey, you never know. Yeah, I have seen some people in my Discord asking about trades for Bradley Beal. I think it's, like I said, for all these guys, I think it's worth shooting your shot. You never know. Talk to the players that have him. Talk to the managers that have him. See if they're interested. And if not, whatever. He'll probably pick it up. If you have Bradley Beal again, do not trade him away. It would be a very big mistake because you're not going to get enough value for him in return. Fourth up, we got Darren Fox. I personally drafted him in my leagues that I play in with my friends or people that I play in my competitive leagues, and I drafted him around 17th overall on average. That's where I tried to get him at. I do have him ranked even higher than that. I have him finishing top 15 this season in terms of fantasy point production, and I'm not really going to waver on that, honestly. I'm sticking with it. His jumper hasn't been falling. Obviously, that's not the strongest part of his game, but I think it is. Like, there's been the layoff. It's the start of the season. You really can't give up on a player that soon. He averaged like 25 points per game last season. So far, the Kings, they've got Harrison Barnes have just been absolutely cooking, so it's been taking a few looks away, but hey, I think that's no way that's going to continue. Darren Fox, everything's running through him. Similar case to all these guys, number one option on a team that's trying to compete for a playoff spot or compete for a championship, whatever it may be. You really just can't give up on those guys. I know it's tempting when you see them performing badly, but if you're new to fantasy, you really cannot. It's not worth it at all. It's the worst mistake you can make if you have a star player is trading him too early. And that's just another reason why I'm not going to be looking to move Darren Fox. If you didn't want to trade for Darren Fox, he is a player that I have been seeing has been getting a lot of people at, like a lot of people have been asking me about like trades for him. I'd be comfortable throwing in like a Malcolm Brogdon for him, maybe a CJ McCollum. He's been having a really hot start to the season, or even an Anthony Edwards. Those are all guys that I'd be comfortable at like offering for Fox. I know you might be a little hesitant because his production's down and those guys have been putting up better numbers so far, but for the long run, I do prefer Fox to the three of them in terms of his fantasy output, and I would be comfortable trading any of them for him. But yeah, that's not like an exhaustive list either. Like obviously, there's other guys that you could trade for Fox, So if you have any questions, like I said, just put them in the comments or join the Discord through the link in the description. So many people in there now. I think there's almost 500 people in there, so they can definitely help you with any trade questions you have, waiver wire pickups you want to know if it's a good idea on or not. Really great community in there, and I'd highly recommend joining through the link in the description. So that being said, let's just go ahead and get into the last player on my list for the day. Alright, so to finish off the list, we're going to have Michael Porter Jr., but let me just say, if you're going to be one of these people that's like, oh, no shit, everybody knows this, like, this isn't helpful, blah, 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 this isn't a good fantasy trade, this is just common sense or whatever, just keep in mind that not everyone knows as much about fantasy as you might, or they might be new, so just ask you, just be respectful, you don't need to be a dickhead about it. Everybody's trying to just learn how to, compete in fantasy, learn how to play it, how to get better at it, so this video, is not for, the hardcore fantasy players that have a lot of experience. It's more for the new people, and everybody's at different starting points or different places in their fantasy seasons, or how much experience they have, so really no need to be an ass about it, man. If it's not helpful to you, hey, fair enough, sorry, I'll have other videos coming out that might be of more use, but I'm just letting everybody in general know buy low trade targets, and you can do with this information what you will. But the last player on my list is probably the player whose value has plummeted the lowest since the season began, and it's Michael Porter Jr. And I don't know why people are so low on him now. He's had a slump, but it's have we not watched Michael Porter Jr. play before? Have we not seen what he did last season? So far he's averaging 11 points per game, 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists. This is Michael Porter Jr., man. I'm just dumbfounded. He averaged 19 points per game last year, and then Murray went down and he just turned even better. He was averaging upwards of 20 points per game. This shooting slump he's in isn't going to continue. He's shooting 34% from the field and 32% from three, and he was around 45% in the previous season and around 40% in his rookie year. This sort of shooting just isn't going to last for any period of time. I feel like he's just adjusting to the season right now. The Nuggets, they're overall they're really sort of getting into the groove of things. Obviously, Joker is killing it as usual, but I'm really urging people to be patient with Michael Porter Jr. if he's on their team. He's probably the player I'm expecting to take the biggest jump up in his production from what he's putting in right now, because it honestly couldn't get much worse. He's averaging 24 fantasy points per game, and just because I think his value is so low right now, someone that I'd consider offering would be maybe an OG Anunoby. He maybe if someone was really desperate, a Draymond Green and someone combination. I just think his value is so low right now that if someone is looking to trade him, I don't think you're gonna have to give up a lot for him, and I'm honestly okay with having him on my team. He is another unvaccinated guy, but like I said, right now he can play everywhere in terms of laws. There's nowhere he's restricted from going to play it. He doesn't have to sit out any games as of right now. And while I normally tend to avoid unvaccinated players because it's really just not worth the risk, when they're at such a low price and you're not going to have to give up that much to get them, I really think why not take the chance. This would be a move that if it pays off for you, it really takes your fantasy team to the next level. And if you're not the best team in your league already, it really just sort of a separating move that'll set you up nicely for the rest of your fantasy season. So yeah, that's going to conclude the video today. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope it helped you guys out. If you're new to fantasy, I got plenty more content coming out that's going to help you guys out. If you're more experienced with it, same thing. Going to have a lot more content coming out. Going to try to post about 4 videos a week now. Just had a pretty hectic week, so took the week off, but getting back into it now. Thank you guys very much for watching, and as always, I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.